Scooby-Doo Monsters Unleashed is one of the best movies ever made, only to be bested by Monster House. More on that here. When I watched the movie again, I had to throw away the old rose-tinted glasses in order to create a fair playing field for, literally any other movie. That didn't matter too much anyway, because it's still a beast. So, released in 2004, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed was the first of one follow-up film to 2002's Scooby-Doo. Another powerhouse success, financially and critically. With this, Monsters Unleashed had some big shoes to fill, had a lot of expectations to meet. Which it did, and a little bit more. A little more than that.
Just a bit more. That's about it.
A little bit of fun history here, according to my Wikipedia sources. It's said that a live-action treatment of Scooby-Doo actually began development in 1994, only for it to be greenlit by Warner Brothers in October of 2000, the year of the Australian Olympics. Initially, the first Scooby-Doo movie was meant to be darker in tone. It wasn't. After the release, the president of Warner Brothers at the time pretty much came out and said,
"Yeah, well, we're doing another one, aren't we?"
Which is good! It was then slated to be released in 2004, and then was released in 2004. Deadlines. And just like the first movie, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed was directed by Roger Gosnell, accompanied by a screenplay by James Gunn, whose most famous work is his Twitter. Everybody knows the gang, they're icons, but I'm gonna list them all anyway. Fred, loves traps. Daphne, absolutely loves turning the trope of being a damsel in distress on its head, which is a trope in itself. Velma, Hawkeye's wife but with glasses. Very smart though, props. Shaggy, easily the best character, eats a lot, it's not the brightest of bulbs, but a bulb nonetheless. Scooby-Doo, you know who. Alright, we're all caught up now, so I'm gonna put the gang aside and we're gonna get into some new characters. Patrick Herring. Now, I don't think that's his last name, but it seems fitting, so we'll go with it. He's played by Seth Green, so whenever I hear his voice, all I can think about is Scott Evil or every fucking Robot Chicken character. Also, while we're here, Matthew Lillard is so good. Come on. He's still Shaggy. Look at that IMDB. He's still Shaggy. And a damn good one at that. Good on him. Heather, a news reporter with an attitude and an agenda. Daphne's really rude to her for no fucking reason before she even expressed her agenda. Jonathan Jacobo, the original pterodactyl ghost. He's an old familiar foe to the gang in this story, but outside of this movie, I don't think he's ever been conceived. Old Man Wickles, ex-cellmate of Jonathan Jacobo, portrayed by Peter Boyle, rest his soul. Ned, the cameraman. That's it. Let's get into the story. So now that I've given context to the characters, I'll try my best to keep the story section as light as possible on any potential spoilers. Heather is the villain mastermind who has been creating monsters in order to take over Coolsville. This is because Heather isn't really Heather, but instead Jonathan Jacobo. Jacobo wants to get back at the gang for putting him away. Prison, that is. Throughout the movie, Shaggy and Scooby feel like they're outsiders to the gang, like they're fourth and fifth wheeling them, which, come on, they do a bit, but none of the gang can catch a frisbee like Scoob, so they can get fucked. You see how the gang just didn't care about how they were openly shit-talking Shaggy and Scooby? Like, they knew they could have heard them, and they probably did know that they could hear them. Like, it's this massive open thing by the kitchen. Where are they going to be? The kitchen. They're just like, oh, Shag and Scoob is the worst. It's like this. It's like this. Yeah, Daff. Aren't Shag and Scoob just like the worst everything ever in the world that's ever been invented, and they should just die?
What the fuck, guys? I'm right here and you can even say this in my fucking face and you're saying it without me even knowing you're acting like I'm not hearing them.
Back to it. Throughout the story, there are these costumes being stolen from Patrick's museum, and they're being turned into real monsters. Oh, it's Patrick's museum, by the way. I didn't mention that, did I? It's Patrick's. He owns it.
Let me see him.
On the theme side of things, there's themes of being an outsider and insecurity. With outsider being Shaggy and Scooby and insecurity being Velma. Velma saw Patty once and really liked him, but throughout the course of her life, she's been hiding herself in her work because in reality, she's more scared of intimacy than monsters. It wasn't until Daphne gave Velma some fantastic advice which just led Velma to embarrass herself by following it, then led to Velma coming to the conclusion that Daphne is full of shit and may just be wrong on this one occasion. Probably more. Like the way Daphne treated Heather when she first met her.
May I have a word with Coolsville's hottest detectives?
Absolutely.
Well, there you go. That's your word. Come on, dear.
That was just weirdly rude. Daphne, that was rude. Now, we've all seen the film. Don't be silly. If you've seen any piece of Scooby-Doo media, you've seen this movie. But do watch it. It's weirdly sexual in places too, and it's really entertaining.
I tear their eyes out of their skulls.
Intimacy? I mean, someone who thinks you're really hot.
My God.
No, but since I decided to actually make a Scooby-Doo review, which was actually a few years ago, been procrastinating a lot. So many fucking people have spoken about it. And watching the movie myself hundreds of times from when I was younger, While still absolutely loving it, I want to take like a fresh approach. What's the best way I can do that? Behind the scenes. I do recall when I was younger watching some behind the scenes from a DVD I had of the film, but I'm going to be focusing on one behind the scenes featurette in particular, which is split into 3 sections: sets, stunts, and effects. An interesting thing about this featurette is there's somewhat of a narrative. There's this guise of Scooby-Doo being behind the camera, sort of giving some in-character commentary.
Well, that's 3 questions. A triple threat to solve.
Once he's out of the fucking freaky graphic form. I find the idea a bit weird that Scooby's like behind the camera, mainly due to the fact that it's behind the scenes. I can see it there to like appeal to kids, but what kids are watching behind the scenes on purpose? They think that maybe the second disc in the box is another movie. And if it's to like not break the immersion of Scooby-Doo being a character, other than him already doing that himself, look at him. That doesn't really work, because the gang's already here, out of character, so it's just the actors, interjected throughout the featurette. Anyway, sets! This movie owes its set design to Bill Bowes. That's a cool name. He's done work on Sleepy Hollow, and the Smurfs 2, the one with the grey Smurfs, Turfs. While the movie's aesthetic is a bit really garish and cluttered looking at times, do not be mistaken! Bill Bowes was clearly very passionate about working on this movie. Initially, everyone said in the interviews the typical things like, yeah, he's got a real keen eye for detail. Some other, the cast always says about their co-workers. You can really just chalk it up to being polite because you can't just openly shit on your co-workers in an interview. Well, you can, but I don't think that's the case here. Why? Because of the museum plaques. Now, what the fuck am I talking about? I'm talking about every single plaque in the museum being fully fleshed out. They've got information from the internet, probably whatever the Scooby-Doo Wikipedia is, Scoobypedia, and they've got sketches.
All the placards were taken off the internet. They're all accurate for each creature.
Maybe some would consider it a waste of time. The audience doesn't see it. They're just kind of there. But they're fucking cool. So, back off my boy Bowes. Now, Bowes had a pretty full plate. He had a lot of work to do. The museum, the mine, Old Man Wickle's house. Yeah, he was very much inspired by how the original show had painted shadows on the floor and on the walls. And he even incorporated that a bit himself in this movie.
I really love some of the stuff they did back on the old show. They used to paint shadows in the floors and the walls, and we did that on a couple sets.
Supposedly, I can't tell where. I'm not really looking too hard though. Maybe it's here, maybe it's this scene. What about this right here? What about when they're dancing the whole... That's one. That's gotta be one. Now, with the sets in this movie, a lot of the architecture that has been seen was inherited. Like the mine, for example. Look! It's an actual old mining museum!
This is an actual mining museum, so we inherited a lot of architecture already. You can see this beautiful building up in the background here. Was an actual mine, it's now a museum.
What did I tell you? Looking good.
A stunts, bro!
Hey, sorry, the stunts section. It didn't have a whole lot going on. I was looking at my notes thinking to myself, well, I really didn't have much to say here. So then I rewatched it and I remembered why I didn't have much to say. I can only reiterate what was stated. You don't have to read between the lines of anything, it's all just, it's there. Pretty straightforward. The stunt coordinator was JJ Macro, and since this movie, he's done work on the CW Arrow show and The Incredible Hulk. Oh, and White Chicks. His work since? Nothing but the best. The fight choreographer, James Bamford, has also worked on Arrow, and just recently has begun directing, and that's cool. Thank you. Congratulations, James, that's a very cool thing to do. You've done well, mate. Well, haven't you done well, James? The actors actually did a fair few of their own stunts, and the actors selected for this segment seemed to be pretty into it. Or, not outright against doing stunts.
There's also, somebody else who's hired. I don't want to take the job away from them.
Basically, they enjoyed it, right? I think that's safe to say. They enjoyed this movie, right? It's just a fun little family film. Oh, but Matt Lillard and Seth Green pushed a great deal to keep their performances physical, which is, pretty fair dinkum, if I do say so myself, and I do. Mad respect, guys. I respect that. But I did find it interesting seeing how they shot the fall at Wickle's mansion. You know that scene where they're like, yeah, you wish it could happen. And they all just kind of like, They all fall down. They all fall down. Clearly they were all shot separate, but I never noticed the scene properly in the movie. It's so obvious now that they were just compiled in post. Or you're telling me the gang didn't really fall down a pit? Let me guess. Next you'll tell me there's no talking dog. Outrageous! So that's Stunts. The SSE, the Set Stunts and Effects. We're halfway there. The Skyrim Special Edition, the SSE. Well, here's a compilation, just some stunts. What a fucking smashing intro. Quite a few crew members were highlighted in this segment. We got Peter Crossman, the visual effects supervisor. We got Betsy Patterson, the effects supervisor. Big Juice, the animation designer. And Mike Mika, the art director. Look, I don't want to cut their mentions short, but did you see what they snuck in the intro here? That is actually fucked! With this being the second movie, the department actually set out to create a more realistic looking Scooby. More fleshed out, more personality, more akin to an actual dog.
The biggest thing that we have to make sure of is that it looks like Scooby is acting like a real dog that has a personality, and all these attributes put together make Scooby much more of a believable creature.
You know, with that they had Matthew become a bit more interactive with Scooby, add a bit more life to the character.
In addition to Scooby being more realistic looking, Rhythm and Hughes has raised the bar on Scooby's performance tremendously. Matthew is much more interactive with Scooby.
We wanted to give ourselves a few more challenges.
Wait, what the fuck? Wait, these guys voluntarily give themselves more work? Wait, what the fuck? Why would you do that? Who actually pushes themselves? Just pump out another Scooby film and call it a day. You dare take any pride in your work? This is a no-passion workplace, mate. Sit down.
Scooby looked great in the first film.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't know about that, Betsy. It genuinely caught me off guard in this segment. The original design of the Skeleton Boys. Initially, they didn't have mouths. That's freaky. That's not right. And that's not quite right.
Big brands, cheap.
Now, it's obvious when you watch the movie that Red Eye here, he's smarter. No, Green Eye, he's not all there. Red Eye's an ideas man, but for anyone who doesn't believe otherwise, I hate to pull this card, but it's canon. Green Eye is a fucking dillweed.
One guy who has the red eye, he's the smart one, he's in control, while the other guy is a little bit more floppier, a little more, stupid, and will do anything he wants the other one to do, and he has a green eye.
Little bitch. Right, I've been working on this since August, okay? It's done. 10 out of 10. Movie's a 10 out of 10, no questions asked. I want to clean up my desktop and work on something new. This film, it's a fucking 10.